So thank you everyone for coming tonight. My beautiful wife, Roma Long, and we had two things go on recently. One, I went to Israel for about 10 days for a kind of a research help out of a copper scroll project. And then when I got back a few days later, she and I flew to Texas for a leadership summit for Christians United for Israel. And Angie, if you could start the slides on that. We have a few slides for CUFI, that's what it's called, Christians United for Israel. Some call it CUFI. Really, the whole goal of Christians United for Israel is putting in the right biblical perspective of the state of Israel, of the Jewish people. Because as we read even in the book of Revelation, you have 12,000 from each tribe being sealed before the Lord. We are there to support the Jewish people because Jesus said, whatever you've done to my brothers, you've done it to me. And we're there to say, hey, whatever you need, we'll support you. And the big thing is anti-Semitism is demonic. It's an evil force in this world, along with racism. It's something to where Satan and his little minions try to cause division between brothers, creation, between mankind. And so Christians United for Israel is to restore the understanding where the Jewish people in the scriptures that God's plan has for him. And when you go to the land of Israel, you see it. God is there, and it's amazing. So in the first slide, we'll go through, we arrived in Texas. And immediately she liked the cowboy hats and tried it on. I was like, oh no, she's already adapted to Texas. And then I was thinking, okay, we're in Texas, it's gonna be warm, and we're gonna like this warm climate. We got hit with that ice storm. And someone said, who brought the ice? It was unprecedented, let's go to the next. There's Roma and I arriving in the hotel as we get there. And this is the leadership summit. These are all the people throughout the United States. And in fact, these are leaders in CUFI, around the world, coming together because they're having meetings, they're getting on the same page, same goals, sharing testimonies and things like that. So go next.
Just to add to that, this was before the actual summit or before the actual conference. We're supposed to join later at noontime, but we decided hey, it's early, let's just go there and see it. That was supposed to be just for the regional directors, and we were not. But we were allowed to sit down in there and just listen to what's going on. And we found out, CUFI, there's another group which is CUFI Action Fund that are assigned to be in Washington, D.C., and they're the one who make hey, when we go to the summit, when we go to the Capitol Hill, what are the key points we need to talk about? So just going back to that, last July 2022, remember we went in there, we went to the Capitol Hill, and we have the cheat sheet on what we're going to talk to our senators, to our representatives, because it's almost like we're lobbying on behalf of CUFI. By the way, just to give you an idea, CUFI right now, they said, although the website still says over 10 million supporters, but right now we're heading to 12 million Christian and Jews alike. And the good thing about with the CUFI, when we go to the Capitol Hill, this is a bipartisan. We're not just talking about Republicans or Democrats. Both senators are supporting the bills when it comes to Israel. That was their common ground. So just to give you a quick heads up too, remember we went there last summer, we went in there and we have to go to our senators representative for the three main things. First, I just wanted to bring it up because I will give you what's the update, because I wanted to know, hey, what happened? Mm-hmm. Is there, changes in that one? Because you wanted to know, if you're representing for something on behalf of all these people, we want to know what's the update. Anyway, the first one, I just wanted to go back if I could see it. The first one was the Defend Act, which enabling national defenses are like that. This is like the Abraham Accord in the Middle East. So we're talking about different countries, Sudan, Bahrain, that would ally with Israel to protect the security of the Middle East. So against Iran, the common ground. Iran, if they can weaponize themselves, they know what they will do. It doesn't matter if you are good or bad. For them, we'll wipe you out of this earth, especially when it comes to the Jews, especially when it comes to Israel. So that act, also just to read it apart, just not, that's what we call Abraham Accord. And the different countries on that one is to, stop Iranian aggression, threatening peace and all security in the Middle East. Primary objective is to develop and implement integrated air and missile defense architecture, supporting these countries that are allying Israel to, secure their, protect them and secure enough funds to if something would happen, we know we could protect. Israel is with us. If Israel is with us, we're in the good hands. So we're inviting, what we're doing is like encouraging other Middle Eastern countries to stand with Israel against Iran. The second one was the appropriation, which is the $3.3 billion in defense and to Israel as outlined in the Memorandum of Understanding. It's like an agreement. It was like in the limbo agreement. Yeah, it wasn't really like signed. It wasn't really a formal agreement, but said, yes, we will give you $3.3 billion to support you to for the Iron Dome, all of those. It's pretty much for Israel, but it's been withheld for so long. It's just like, when we went in there, it's just like keeping them the promise. Didn't you promise? Didn't you say this? Can you release that funds for Israel? And that was the second one. The third one was the CUFI.
One of this is we have funds set up from our government to go fund Israel in their defense, but not just to protect themselves, to protect their neighbors. They've been handed the police keys to police the whole Middle East. And what we do is we give them funds, we give them equipment, intelligence, military assets, planes, whatever. And what they do is they turn around and take our fighter jets, our tanks, and they soup them up and improve them way beyond our capabilities, and they give it back to us. And then we have the latest technology for our military to implement in our government, in our armed forces. So what we give them, they're doing all the hard work to advance it even greater. And whenever Israel gets something and we get it back, they're going, oh my goodness, how did you do this? So these funds and these bills, they were being held and not to be passed. And going to DC last year, that's one of the bills that was pushed for, Christians United for Israel showing up in Washington, D.C., saying, hey, you guys are withholding these funds. You need to pass this because this is for America's security too. Yes. And this is our greatest ally in the Middle East. So Roma's covering that, and it benefits us because they pour it back, and we're blessed because they enhance it way better than what we can on our capabilities. Okay.
And the last one is the CUI Elimination Act. This is like whenever Israel tried to defend themselves from the rockets, the United Nations human rights question what they're doing. Oh, you're abusing human rights. Think note, this is a country who's trying to defend themselves from being blown up every day, almost like every day of their lives. But then the United Nations question that. This is what you call the Commission of Inquiry. It's kind of like they question for everything they're trying to do against them. Instead of, you should be happy that, hey, you're protecting yourselves, but then they question it. What are you doing? You're hurting other people. Oh, you let them die. How about the Jewish people? You let us die too if we cannot defend ourselves. So those are the three keys that we have to go and talk to our senators and representatives to support. When we went in there, Blaine Luckenmeyer, he never heard of CUFI, but we went there for the first time. He was all ears. He was very attentive. He was asking, tell me about it. How do you want me to vote for this?
He was the first one between senators and congressmen to say and sit down at the table and said, How do you want me to vote? I'm your representative. Tell me what to do.
Blaine Lookenmeyer.
He was straightforward. What do you want me to do? And then some of the other people that we went to, they were good. Yeah, we have people that will look into it. But he sat down with us and he's like, I'm your representative. What do you want me to do? And I was like, wow. I mean, he was going and he read, is this the whole thing? He went and read the entire document line for line and marked every bit of it and brought up points. And well, go ahead.
Anyway, when we were there at Texas, San Antonio, I wanted to go to and ask Sandy Parker. She's Reverend, John Hagee's daughter. She was the one in charge with the CUFI Action Fund. She's the one doing all this hard work, making sure, because she's a lawyer, so she has backgrounds of what's happening between Israel and America. So she has so much background. So I wanted to ask her when we were in San Antonio, what happened to those key points? And she said 2 of this were passed. She didn't tell me exactly what, but she said we're working on the COI. They're kind of revising it with the wording and all, because it's very tricky. It looks so good, but then you got to learn to find a way to kind of revise it in a way, the wording. I know if you are familiar with the law and all, it's very important you have to use certain word, and that's the one we're working. So I assume the $3.3 billion must have been released, and the Defense Act has been approved, it's been passed, as far as I know, because she said 2 of them were passed. So out of 3, it's good to know that, yes, 2 of them. So Mary Ellen, our work, worth it.
Good.
It was amazing.
She went with us. There was a group of us that went, and there was quite a few, and they were all around the United States, and each one went out. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of people in D.C. Representing our Christian values and representing the Jewish people for the security and even against anti-Semitism and making a voice, and they get heard. What is happening with CUFI is unprecedented. We're like 2 million people. It costs $0 to even join. You just fill out a form, say, hey, if you want to make donations, you can make donations. You just fill out a form and say, hey, I understand, I support the Jewish people, and pray for them, for the nation of Israel, and their plan that God has for them. And you get literature, you get emails and stuff. It costs you nothing, but it's just getting members together on the same page. It's unprecedented. I remember meeting a few rabbis, a place where I went, Roma and I had went, and us being non-Jewish, walked in where most of the people were Jewish, and there was a bubble, and we were like the outsiders, and they just didn't know if they could trust us. And as one person said to me, what do you expect? People want to kill us. That's what they're used to. People want them dead. And so they've got to protect themselves. And as we got there, one of the wonderful rabbi men gave me a big old hug and greeted me, and I'm like, whoa, it was really nice. And after that, everyone says, oh, these people are okay. Yes, and they saw that you're a friend, you're an ally, and you don't have a motive behind it, because after thousands of years being persecuted, that's why the communities of the Jewish people are really closed off, is because you don't blame them. Who do you trust? And CUFI is an example of those walls coming down between Jew and non-Jew. And what we're doing is unprecedented. We're going to the law offices, we're going to the courts, we're going to the senators, and we're going together hand in hand, both Jew and non-Jew, and say, hey, we believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and we know there's a plan that God has, and we're here to support you as God comes to restore and bring what they call the final redemption, and what we call when Jesus returns. So,
one of the things too, why do we need to support Israel? It's biblical. It's not just being political, but mostly biblical. If we say we are Christian, we are standing with Israel, then we like it or not, Jesus is a Jew. That was the background that he was raised for us to understand that fully, it was like for me, it took a realization to realize my Jesus is a Jew. I was brought up in the Catholic, I'm a Christian, I'm not Catholic, but in the Philippine Catholic is a big thing. And most of the time they were told, I think they were misinformed. They said, oh, the Jews are the one who killed Jesus. Little did I know that Jesus is a Jew. Why would he do that to himself? It was a realization for me coming out from that culture. So when you say you wanted to support Israel, not because you want to be political, I'm not into politics. Until you get involved with Israel, it's a different story. When you say you wanted to see the timeline, what's happening in the world, watch Israel. That's your timeline. That's your clock. If you're watching if you are just looking in little things that you are basically raising your family, paying your bills day to day, extend. Your vision right now, your perspective is too small. When you expand it, then you see the bigger picture. What is that? When God said, watch and pray, you watch Israel. It wasn't just pray for Israel. You're not just watching for things that you are encountering every day. We're talking about your standing. How do you support Israel? Because the Bible said, I will bless you to those, I will bless those who will bless you. I will curse those who will curse you. As a Christians, are we standing with Israel? If we say we believe in God and then you hate the Jews, you hate this and that, that's a big question mark.
Where's your heart at? Yeah. So, anyways, that was one of the big things with CUFI. If we go back to the slides really quick, guess who that is?
I promised Dr. Billy Brim to kind of Photoshop her plates. I'll cover your plate. So I'm keeping my promise.
And there's Pastor John Hagee, who was there and speaking. So, these are the leaders of CUFI that are there. These are pastors and ministers above many congregations around the world. And these are the points that she covered, those 3 points that went to D.C. And because of the voice of the Christian people and Jewish people hand in hand, it got heard. And there are many things, if it wasn't for this organization, a lot of things would have slipped through. And things could have went really bad. Really, really bad. Next. This is an example what Roma had brought up a little bit, but I'm going to let her cover that because this is one of the main goals. Universities, high schools, middle school, and even elementary. A lot of the Holocaust is not even being taught that it even happened. And they went to Israel and they took a very high profile person with a very high degree in college that was a graduate, and they take him to Auschwitz and they're doing the whole thing, and the word came up Holocaust, and he's like, he's a college graduate with a degree. And he's like, well, what does Holocaust mean? He never heard that word. He didn't know what it was. He was never, from grade school to college, never taught what the Holocaust was. And it wasn't his fault. He just didn't know. So CUFI has worked with politicians and making the Holocaust a required curriculum for people to study, not just universities, but also high school. And they're working on a curriculum for grade school. And maybe, just maybe, because Roma's been doing the curriculum for children's church, and they're interested in her work, and maybe they can, we don't know, maybe they can use some of her curriculum for across the United States. So exciting. But this is the course, a book of just educating people.
It's for adults.
Yeah, for adults and everything. So you'll see examples up there.
The CUFI is the private school that's under, the John Hagee's ministry. And so they had they said they had a week where they had just like CUFI week. So they pretended the kids are kind of doing all this Jewish stuff. Like they're pretending one of their walls is like a prayer. It's like a wall where the Western wall where they kind of put the prayers. So it's amazing if you see us doing something different this year, because that's what God put in my heart. Like I said, you know what? After we went to the summit, my heart has never been the same. So I said, Pastor, Can we do CUFI Kid? Pastor, right away? Yes, I would love that. But of course, again, we don't have the curriculum. So what I had to do, I had to look at all the stuff that's kind of related, but I have to modify in a that would kind of fit with our kids that we have. They are grade school kids. So we want to make sure it's simple enough, but we are giving them the lesson enough to, hey, we got to support Israel. Before you say your amen, pray for Israel. Simple message. You talk Holocaust, it's kind of like that's supposed to be a 6th grade curriculum. But how do you teach these little kids? How do you expose them to that? They knew bullying. You remember bullying? It's not okay. This is what happened. This is an extreme bullying that happened in the past that we cannot allow to happen. If you see the poster, kids help me out with that. But we got to train them. We got to show them on how to do it in a way. We're not talking violence. If you're going to look at the enemies, people that are against the Jews, you know what they've been doing with the kids, babies. They've already been trained to hate their kids, their babies' movies. It's all about hating Israel. Why do we have to wait that long to tell our kids, oh, we need to support Israel? We need to start at the very young age, because as an educator, I believe the way you train your kids, the way you expose your kids, it's very, very important, because we want them to be aware. Israel, we need to support Israel. You need to rekindle that love from the very, very beginning. Why we need to support Israel.
Yep, good stuff. Okay, next slide. This is fundamental things when it comes to biblical. We talked about the Israeli defense. We help supply their missiles for their defense. And this is a graphic to give you an idea. The state of Israel basically has a force field around it. They have their Iron Dome, but they have radar and sensors around the entire state of Israel to detect rockets and things coming in so they can shoot them out of the air. And this is like futuristic Space Force stuff. In fact, this type of technology, they put it on their tanks, and it will detect what missile's coming at the tank, what type of missile it is, and how to disarm it in that, like this. It automatically knows exactly what's coming at it, and it can disarm that missile where it just falls to the ground and no one gets hurt. It just not really detonates it, it just disables it in mid-flight. Phenomenal stuff. And they could even have soldiers around the tank, and if someone shoots an RPG at it, it just go boop, falls to the ground. We're talking about their technology's phenomenal. And a lot of it's not really public.
Just to add to that, Amos, and this is because they know Israel has this, and so the terrorists, guess what they're doing? They are making a PGM rockets. What does it mean? Precision guided missile. That it could hit directly, if they're going to point it from A to Z, it directly land to the place where they want it to. Because what they've been doing, they're just shooting rockets randomly. All right, and the thing about this, when the kids heard that siren, they just have a little place. You hide it in there. When you're in the playground, you see that place, that's where you need to hide when you see the rockets. They're very resilient people. In our Western world, we cannot. There's no way we would allow that our neighbors would do that to us, right? But in their countries, this is what they've been dealing with every day. And for the CUFI, for the United Nations to question you're abusing human rights when they're trying to protect themselves. Come on now, something wrong in here. You're not seeing the picture. Again, we're battling with spiritual thing. Not the person that you see face to face, but the spirit behind it. Also, Hezbollah. They knew what Israel can do, so Hezbollah has developed already, right now, 500 PGM rockets. So if this one will go past either area where they can launch it to Israel, this is like a precise missile. What it does, it's more dangerous. That's why we need to support Iron Dome. We need to fund it. U.S., we need to fund it and to make sure that their dome is strong enough to counterattack this.
And if you see in the news where Israel's bombing Syria and places in Syria, places in Lebanon, it's because they found out there is a cache of these highly sophisticated rockets that come from Iran. So Israel and here's the thing, Russia owns that airspace. And Israel just says, Russia, we're going to bomb this spot. And Russia says,
They didn't say. It's kind of like, okay,
So
whatever Israel wants, they will.
Israel's really trumping or controlling the airspace over Syria, even over Russian control. And they'll just go in there and blow up a whole facility whenever they want because they have to protect themselves. Okay, next slide. So when I was in Israel, I go into a shop of a Jewish man who's selling T-shirts and different things. And his name is Yuri. And I told Yuri, hey, as soon as I get back to the States, I'm going to CUFI in Texas. And he goes, you're going to Texas? Oh, I love Texas. I've got a Israel, Texas T-shirt, like Texas loves Israel. And it had big old Texas on there with Israel on there. Here, I'll give you the shirt. Here's my business card. And he packaged it all up. Give it to someone in Texas for me. And I'm like, okay, that is amazing. So when I go to Texas for CUFI, this minister who is head over Oklahoma and Texas, and he lives in Texas, and I was talking to him, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to Israel Monday. And I was like, you're from Texas too, right? And he goes, yeah. And I said, well, this shirt is for you. And I give him the shirt, and he goes, I'm going to go into that shopping area where this place is at. So I'll wear it. So I haven't heard the rest of the story, but I gave him the shirt from the guy from Israel. So he's going to go to his shop. And that's like, what, a turnaround in less than 2 weeks. So see how God works. This is us meeting some people from the UK.
The one who writes this.
They write these magazines. They're phenomenal. In fact, they work hard to dig to the truth in the politicians who are connected to what. And in fact, there was someone in the politics that was trying to put on a facade like they were good people. And so they did a background check and found out who they're connected to, who funded them. This person almost made it in office. And if they would have got, like, as the Prime Minister of Britain, it'd been hard to get them out. And this person was very anti-Semitic and very against Israel. And they put all the research and sent it to all the news articles and all the news magazines and the publishers and sent them all their information. And those places sent it all throughout Britain, and it kept that person from getting in office because they found out who they really were. So people are working hard behind the scenes diligently. They're the watchmen on the wall. Next slide. We'll get through this. There's their pin. We have a pin where it's got the Israeli flag and the U.S. flag joined together. Theirs is the UK flag, and they gave us one.
You gave us one for you and one for me.
Well, yeah, we both got one. Okay, this is, if I can pronounce his name right, Zev. He is the basically like the administrator over the city of David in Israel. And this is the exciting stuff. We'll wrap this up around here. So in the city of David, there is the pool of Siloam. Remember when, Jesus heals blind man and the people at the pool of Siloam? Well, they found the pool of Siloam a number of years ago. This is an artist's rendition of the pool of Siloam. It's massive. It's very, very big. So when I was in Israel, if you go to the next slide, if you look on, let's see, the left-hand side, you see that fence in the woods? 7 years ago when I was in Israel, that was just all brush and thick woods. And someone owned it that Israel didn't own. But if you look on the right-hand side, you see the steps that go down into the pool of Siloam. So if you're going to go to the temple during Jesus' day, and even before that, you go through the pool of Siloam and then go up to the path up to the temple. They found that pool. They only had half of it uncovered. Israel just purchased that whole pool of Siloam. They're going to, next slide, you can see in that slide where they started digging. They're already started to clean that pool out and probably fill it up with water to where when you go to Israel, they will have the whole pool of Siloam recovered like in Jesus' day. This is one of the archaeologists there. They're doing research. They're going under the pool of Siloam that predates it and see what's underneath there in Solomon's day, King David's day, because they want to know what's under it. They had no access to this, but they purchased it. They got the whole thing. In fact, it's going to be one of the major stopping points in Israel in the future, near future. It's a big deal. So when you go into Israel, if you go to the next slide, it's hard to see, next slide, they are planning on cable cars to take you into Jerusalem, and you can stop at the city of David, take an elevator, and get out at the Pool of Siloam, and go through it, and then ascend up to the Temple Mount. Just like they used to do for thousands of years. That's their plan. It's really neat. Next slide. I think we're getting close to the end. That might be it. I think it is, yes. All right.
Just to encourage quick to that, just to wrap this one up, Israel is willing to sponsor pastors, ministers who's never been to Israel. But here's the thing, you have to attend the summit. That was the requirement. If you've never been to Israel, never been to, ask, could you bring a girl? So yeah, a woman minister is welcome. But they said, if you have that, if desire to see Israel and you're in the ministry, I encourage you to go to the summit. The CUFI is willing to sponsor you for free, and I've heard it's first class of everything. So
it's under John Hagee.
The CUFI ministry, that was
group,
their heart,
but
just to
under
bring pastors
CUFI,
there.
yeah.
The more, if you're in the ministry that way, I bet Amos, it changed your heart the moment you get there.
When you go to Israel, it changes you because, and their whole point is, there are a lot of pastors, a lot of ministers out there. Thank you, babe. Good job. She brought up a good point because I'm glad she covered that. When you're in Israel, especially a pastor or a minister, and you've never stepped foot in the land, it changes you when you go there and you see it, because you see God working in real time. It's not just letters on in the text of a book. You're physically walking on the streets. You're seeing the hills. You're looking at the Pool of Siloam. You're going to rivers that are flowing underground in tunnels. Actually, I got water from there. They said I can get some water out of there. But there are things in Israel, as a minister, CUFI is willing to pay for a minister to go to Israel to see it for themselves, because they want this being taught from churches to help educate people of God's plan for not just Christians, but the Jewish people, and how in the last days we're in unprecedented times, and you can physically see what is going on. Because when you go there, that's reality, and when you leave, you feel like you're detached from prophecy. When you're there, you're watching it live, and it's amazing. It's hard to explain. So this leads up into my trip to Israel. I went there January 10th, and thank you for everyone that had prayed and helped out so I can go. It wasn't meant to be a tourist trip. It was meant to help Jim Barfield in the Copper Scroll group. Whatever help he needed on, we're there to support him, because what he has discovered and what he has worked on and done is unprecedented. And he had to go there, and I told him, don't tell me until I get there, because I don't want to say something I'm not supposed to say. And because he's working hard to do things for Israel, only for Israel, so God can work with them. And so he had some very high-profile people lined out in Israel to meet and take them physically to the place of Qumran, where things are written, where things were buried for the future. And anyways, so this is my arrival as we're going. This is my view from the plane. I'm looking out the window, and I'm thinking, this looks like HD plus, like 8K or higher. It was amazing. The clouds, the sun, the water, it was just gorgeous. I'm thinking, this is just unreal. So next slide is a video of the flight coming in. I want you to see it. And I was just blown away on how beautiful it was arriving in Israel. So we're flying into Tel Aviv, and the colors, the clouds, everything was even people there were saying, man, the sky is just beautiful right now. Everything's just gorgeous. So our arriving in Israel was, I don't know, I've never seen a flight. It looked like a painting, but it was high definition. And you just see as we're going through there, it's just like, wow, this is amazing. And I have a lot of this stuff on my Facebook page. So I think I took over 2,000 pictures. I will not show those 2,000 pictures tonight. I think I have over 100 videos. So I have stuff posted on the Facebook page, and I can't do this tonight. I'm limited, but I just want to say thank you for helping me get there and help out Jim Barfield. So, and the group, because it pertains to what is to come. It pertains to the redemption of Israel, the restoration of Israel. And here we are hand in hand saying, hey, we're going to help you any way you can because God is with you. God's got a plan for you. So next, Justin Roark, my best friend, and I, flying from St. Louis, which is 2.5 hours, and then flying to layover for a couple hours, and then flying to Israel in 12 hours. This is at the end leg of our flight. And we had maybe 30 minutes of sleep during this whole time. We just couldn't sleep because the seats we were in were made for people that were maybe 5 foot tall. And in fact, there was a lady probably around 5 foot in the seat beside us, curled up like a cat in the chair and slept the entire way. I'm like, how is this possible? And we're just like, oh. So when you get tired, you kind of get goofy, or I do. I don't get grouchy, I get goofy. So we're just laughing our head off doing silly things. So he takes his little neck thing and he flips it around and puts it on his head, and it looks like a rabbi with the hat. And so we're just laughing. Our eyes are bloodshot because we're tired. All right, next slide. This is when we got into Israel. We're heading to our place, and the sun was setting. We get there right before the Sabbath day. Everything's shut down for the Sabbath day, which is Saturday. So it's Friday around 5:30, and this is what it looks like when we get there, and we're hurrying to get to our place. And let's see. The next slide will be us in Israel as a group celebrating the Sabbath day with a dinner. And Lori Barfield made the halal bread, like a big old loaf of it. And then Jim Barfield holds it up and blesses it. And we hand out breads and we're praying and we're saying thanks and we're just having a good time of fellowship. Afterwards, you'll see it. We did Good Father and we did worship. A Native American man, Comanche, was there. Yes. And he is, boy, you're talking about Indian, you can tell. And, but he had the wood flute, and he had guitars, and he could play piano. He was just extremely talented. And there were 14 of us in the group to help do the whole Jim Barfield. But this is us just getting together, doing songs and doing worship. We go on the Mount of Olives, and we do worship on the Mount of Olives. The very place where the scripture says when Jesus comes, remember the disciples were with Jesus and he ascends into heaven and the two angels show up and said, why you look in the sky? The way you see him go is the way he's going to come back. So he's coming back on the Mount of Olives like the book of Zechariah says. So we were on that spot doing worship, waiting for the Lord to return. And we have Muslims around us, Jewish people around us, and many people around us, and we're sitting there just doing songs, and people just stand there getting into worship, and it's just like, and then the clouds start breaking, and the sun comes out, and we're going, oh, it's like a golden light. It's like, oh, Lord, thank you. This is amazing. So the whole point, going to Qumran, we were there to help Jim Barfield out. And I will do a high overview of why Qumran, just to give you an idea. But Qumran, we'll go to the next slide. 1947, they found in Qumran the Dead Sea Scrolls, what they call them. The caves were full of biblical scrolls and other scrolls from the temple, bunch of stuff. And they went all through those caves, finding the largest stash of biblical and non-biblical writings. Unprecedented. 1947, right before they became a nation in 1948. So when they ended, per se, the leg of the research, next, is they found a copper scroll by chance, per se. Oh, the wall caved over and there lies this copper scroll. They had no idea there was a copper scroll. They found it, and some guy used a dental thing, cut it up so they can read it. Why a copper scroll? Because it was meant to last for however it needs to last until the Lord comes back. We'll cover that. So that's the copper scroll when they found it. Next, in Amman, Jordan, in their museum, this is it. It's in the museum in Jordan. Next. So you can see that it's cut up in sections. In this copper scroll, it mentions this copper scroll that they had no idea existed until 1952. And in the copper scroll, it mentions where they buried treasures from the temple of King Solomon. What's the odds, huh? That was 1952 when they found this copper scroll. However, what makes it even more interesting, I'm giving you a high overview. Next slide. There was a book published in 1648 by a rabbi who took biblical writings and fragments of stuff and put it into a book and published it. One of those fragments speaks of 5 people, some of them prophets, but 5 men called by God to hide things from Solomon's temple. And this book was in 1648. And it states, we'll go to the next slide. These are the holy vessels and the vessels of the temple, Solomon's temple. Okay? This is 1648. They didn't find the copper scroll till 1952. So it was taught in the rabbinical schools, handed down, that 5 people hid these vessels, the vessels of the temple that were in Jerusalem, and in every place they were inscribed, and it gives you the people mentioned in it, but and his companions, and it was inscribed on copper plates. So generation after generation, it was taught in their school that 5 people hid the things from Solomon's temple, and it was written on copper plates. That was what was taught. 1952, they find the copper plates. What's the odds of what was being taught for thousands of years? And in 1952, they find copper plates describing a copper scroll, we call it, but they are copper plates that was connected. And guess what? It's describing exactly what was written in this book. Things from Solomon's temple are buried. And where? This is unprecedented because this had been hidden from Herod. This has been hidden from Caesar. This had been hidden from Antiochus Epiphanes. And yet, in our age, in our time, they find the scroll when Israel gets back in the land, and they were trying to figure it out. Go next slide. These are the records written by 5 righteous men. And it gives you who they are. 2 of them are prophets, Zechariah and Hezekiah, Haggai. 5 of them, the prophets, 5 of them. So if you go to the next slide, they actually took, Vendell Jones was one of the men that helped work on this, but they took that copper scroll and they had someone analyze the writing on this copper scroll. And they said 5 different people penned it, actually hammered in the Hebrew letters. So agreeing with a record from 1648 that talked about a copper scroll, and then they find the copper scroll in 1952, and 5 people wrote it just like the document from 1648 said. What's the odds? Unprecedented. And that's not the only document that describes these things. So, anyways, next. People wondered where were these things hidden, because it talks about a double entry mikvah pool. It talks about like a high place, a hotel. It talks about steps leading east, all this stuff being mentioned in the scroll. And they're like, well, it sounds like it's scattered all over Israel. Jim Barfield, do I have him on here? Oh, we'll cover it. But Jim Barfield is a retired fire investigator, and he loved biblical timelines. And his friends were doing the Copper Scroll stuff, trying to figure it all out. Well, the guy's brilliant in investigation. He's also retired in the military. He was a helicopter pilot. So he's used to reading maps and terrain and different things, but also being an investigator. So he goes, I'll play around with this Copper Scroll. He figures it out in just a matter of minutes. And he goes, oh my goodness, and he tells his wife, Lori, I think I figured it out. So he and his wife head to Qumran, because it states, in the Valley of Achor, in the ruins of the Valley of Achor. That's how it starts out. And so the Valley of Achor, next slide, as we go in there, next slide. I give you a map of Israel. That way you have an understanding where Israel's at. Left-hand side would be Jerusalem, and then right-hand side would be like the Dead Sea would be in the middle. Next slide. Let's go to that. And I got a little map. There, that big red circle is the Valley of Achor. The left-hand side is Jerusalem. It's due east. It's straight east. Next slide. So that Valley of Achor, there's a better map. You can see. Go next slide. That would be in the ruins, which are in the Valley of Achor. Qumran was in the ruins, is the ruins. It was a like a little township. Literally, it is a model of Jerusalem during Jeremiah's day. It's laid out just like Jerusalem was in the days of Jeremiah, but it was flipped upside down. And Jim figured it out. He goes, oh my goodness, it's got a pool here. Jerusalem has a pool here. It is a model of Jerusalem in the wilderness. From the pools to the rooms to everything laid out. And it says, in the ruins which is in the Valley of Achor, under the stairs which go eastward 40 cubits, a box filled with silver weighing in all 17 talents. So next slide, you'll see the ruins of the Valley of Achor. This area just right next to the next cliff is where they found all the scrolls. So it makes sense. They find all the Dead Sea Scrolls, they find the Copper Scroll, and guess what? There's the ruins right next to where these things were buried. Kind of simple, isn't it? And yet people were trying to look all over Israel, and Jim's like, well, it kind of makes sense, it's there. So he goes to Israel, and next slide. There's only one set of steps leading eastward in the ruins of Qumran. And it measures exactly 40 cubits, just like on the Copper Scroll, to the exact measurement. And he's like, wow, this is interesting. So he went to the next location. It measured exactly. He went to the next location, and it had exactly what was mentioned, a double entry baptismal. We call it a mikvah, where they would go in. And that's unique. He finds that in Qumran. All the landmarks match what's on the Copper Scroll. Even to the exact cubit, it matches on the Copper Scroll. And you can see that little red dot. That's one of the places where 17 talents of silver is. This stuff has not been dug up yet. Next slide. This is in 2009. He gets with the archaeologist in 2009 and shows them his research. And they're like, oh my gosh, he figured it out. He's found it. So they started to dig. The place he chose to dig, they chose a couple locations, but one of the places he chose to dig was a place where it said and was stated that the tabernacle of Moses was buried. Aaron's garments had been buried. Because we know by historical records, when Solomon built the temple, they took the tabernacle of Moses and those things, and they put them inside the temple and retired them in a side room. And when you read about Josiah, where they were renovating the temple and fixing it up, that was a Jubilee year. And when they go in there and they're fixing up the temple, they happen to find the handwritten scrolls of Moses himself. Because those things had been in storage inside the temple. Makes sense. Well, according to 2 Maccabees, Jeremiah was commanded by God to take those things out of the temple before Nebuchadnezzar came and destroyed the temple. And that was in the priestly writings. So it's mentioned north of Qumran, at the north end, at the red mound, the heap, it's a mound. On the north side is a cave that Jeremiah and them buried the stuff, which is articles, the altar of incense and different things from the temple was buried there, and they sealed up the cave. And then they lost the location where it was buried, mentioned by the 300 priests that were involved. And Jeremiah prophesies and says, under what the Maccabee says, in their records, the priests saying, Jeremiah prophesied, these things shall be concealed until the latter days, until Israel's back into the land and God shows them favor. And we'll cover that. So he goes right to the spot. Let's go to that cave. Let's go to this in the desert, north of this community in Qumran, and let's go to that big rock there because the copper scroll says there's a cave there and something's buried there. So they go there and dig. They go down, next slide. And you can see the dig. This is 2009. Jim Barfield's in the white shirt in the top of your screen. And the archaeologists do the dig and they hit plaster. They're in the desert and they hit plaster, mortar, confirming what had been handed down by the priests for thousands of years. On that north side is a cave, and it was sealed up. And here Jim Barfield's like, oh my goodness. The archaeologists call a stop, pause the dig, put it on hold, and Jim been waiting ever since to finish what they've started. Those two archaeologists go off and do their other work that they have to do. One of them dies in a freak accident where a cave falls in on him. The other man dies of, I think, cancer. So the people that he has contact with have passed. And that was one of the reasons why going back to Israel, because he's working. He had a couple high-profile people, some other people. When we were there, he was busy with interviews and talking with news people. And I mean, it was phone call after phone call, arranging, getting to go. And we were there. Whatever you need help with, Jim, that's what we're here for. We're here to help you out because his passion is, let's restore this stuff back to Israel because this pertains to the Lord's coming. Let's do our duty. That's his whole passion. So we're like, we'll help you out, Jim, because that's your calling. Whatever you need help on to make your work less, that's why we're there. And so, go to the next slide. 2014, Moshe Feiglin, who won a Knesset seat, a government, and they have diplomatic immunity. They can do whatever they want. So Moshe Feiglin took advantage of that and says, Jim Barfield, I've seen your research. I believe you. What do you want to do? He's like, well, I just purchased a state-of-the-art, super high-end metal detector. Since we have our digs not going on, let's scan these locations so we know exactly where each item is. So if it says so many cubits by this wall, well, we're along that wall. So let's just scan some of these locations so we know exactly if they're still there, if they're even there, because it's been thousands of years since this stuff's been buried. And so next slide, they go out. They scan 4 locations, and it goes off the charts. This is one of the scans, and Jim, I got this online. I just want to make sure everything I'm sharing is what he shared publicly. out of respect for Jim. So these things I got offline. That's one of the scans they did, where the locations they were. There's like roughly 60 locations, 57 locations that they know of. They scanned 4 locations, and they actually scanned metal detector. It like took 6 people to walk this thing around in a pattern to scan the ground that goes like 60 feet down in the ground. It's a big industrial one. And it went off the charts what they've scanned. So he takes the scans back to the engineer who designed it and said, I want to make for sure this is working right. And the guy who did the metal detector said, it's working quite well. Where in the world were you? Because this is gold off the charts. This is silver. This is like Fort Knox. Where did you go to get these scans? Jim's like, I'm not going to tell you. But it was working correctly. That's one of the other things they want to finish on doing, is finish scanning all the places that are mentioned that he knows of, so they know precisely each location, whether some of the items there are not, because they only scanned 4. That's one of the reasons why going over to Israel. One, they want to have it do the dig, but they also want to scan these locations, compile it, and have a nice evidence, factual, historical records to hand to the Israeli Antiquities Authority. And this is history. I'm just telling you, we know things before the world knows them. And the Bible says that the Holy Spirit reveals to you things to come. I'm letting you people know what we're seeing here has not yet been known to the world. And this is something pertains to the future. And here it is. These are the scans of those locations, because it's mentioned that the Messiah, when he comes, he himself will come and use them and have them. So, next slide. One of the other scans went off the charts. I think red is gold. And I'm trying to remember, he had the height and the width. I think they were doing, I can't remember what it was, like 6 feet by 50 feet, a path. One of them was that cave that was sealed up that I showed you. That was one of the, go back one slide, please. Let's see. Red, orange, blue, gold, silver, iron, green is iron and steel. Next. One of them shows you which location it was, but I won't tell you because I just don't want to be in error. But one of those scans was where they scanned that cave place. So, next. Here I am in Qumran. Let you know, I was there. And Jim had a group of people. We'll go next. He had a group of people there, showing them people that are connected, hopefully that will help out the project, that know people, you know what I'm saying? He took them, and we had books of all his research, and he had it all mapped out, and he walked them to the locations and read the description so they can see the writings and see it right before their eyes. One guy that was there seemed a little hesitant, like, are you really serious? At the end, he was like, there's no question about it. So if you could play that video, it's 2 minutes long. I'll tell you, go ahead and play it. There should be audio. And today, we're at Qumran. I'm Amos Long, and we have been here for, I don't know, in Israel for a few days. Okay. So today we come and visit Qumran. This is Jim Barfield. Anyways, with the Copper Scroll. Go ahead and pause it, because Jim really Barfield is the one to figure out the Copper Scroll. Explaining Qumran, what's on it, what location. And he's basically saying, Jim, if you want to talk, all about Qumran. There's me on the left, Jim Barfield in the middle. There's Chris, and then there's Scott on the right. Scott was the guy that takes people through Israel, and he gives them tours, but not really tours. I don't want to say tours. It's not tours. He's taking you biblically to places, and you're having Bible studies and reading the text where the events actually went on. And it's just like, so he's doing Bible studies at each location where the scriptures are at. So it's not like going to like a fun park. You're going there and you're studying and you're standing in the very place where you're reading it. It's phenomenal. And if you ever want to go, you go with Scott. I can connect you because I've never seen anyone teach at that level with that understanding. He is very good. And wow, it was great. All right, moving along. 8:19. I'm doing good. This is Jim in Qumran, and he's got the group of people there. One man off to the right-hand side, if you can see him, he's from a Israeli news place. So he's going through this whole thing. He's got people there that can help out connecting, talking to people. It's unprecedented what's sitting there and waiting. And even the Jewish people there, let's see, one guy, I kind of don't want to point him out, but I'll tell you, one guy there is connected to other people, but this man's last name is Cohen. That means he's a descendant of Aaron himself. And he's there looking at his inheritance as a priest. Do you understand? A son of Aaron is learning about where things that have been buried, him as in the line of priesthood. And he's so excited. And he's like, what is wrong with the Jewish people? This is right here. Let's do it. And so I find that phenomenal. Next. Another location where Jim is showing them, they've got the books, he's walking them through all these locations. I'll just let you know, since 2014, when they did the scans, communication with people in Israel, per se, to get the project going, had just kind of dwindled and stopped. And he was like, what is going on? I mean, these people know what's there. How come there's just silence? And until Jim got a hold of us around November-ish, get your ticket for Israel, because I need help, we're going, and I got work to do. And I'm like, okay, how am I going to do that, dear Lord? I really, really, really want to go. God made a way through you people, and I want to thank you. I don't know how to mention this. I mean, there's no words for it. What you're seeing eventually will be in museums, in the history books. People are going to be reading about these people that I'm talking to, and I'm sitting in the car with, giving directions as we go through the Israeli traffic. And this is history. It's not yet written in the books. You're witnessing history. It's done. It's just a matter of time. So, next. This is that red heap. This is the mound that's north of Qumran, not very far at all. And so I'm letting you know, I was standing there because I was surprised I was standing there. And there it is. And we walked around it. It's all rock.
So not everybody's allowed there. You guys have special.
Okay, because we were with Jim Barfield, we had special permissions to do things there that most people didn't have. That's the favor of God. And those people know Jim is there for the right reason. And it's research, it really is. And I took thousands of photos, and it's just about documentation, getting stuff ready, helping out, because eventually this stuff's going to be in printed documents, whatever. It's the future. And I told Justin, my best friend, because he's with me helping, and I said, we're just here to help him out. He's got a calling, whatever it takes to help him out with his calling, because it's all about the Lord's coming anyways. So whatever it takes for us to do it, here we are. And next, that's a video. I don't know if there's audio, but go ahead and play it.
Okay, Justin
and that's me talking and saying, here we are, our first time. We're walking up to that place.
Coming here. You can see the view behind us.
This is going up to that cave.
Wow, the view is amazing.
See the hills.
You see the walk as we head up there.
To the place where they did a dig, and
that's with the mortar.
Yeah, and right when the project got shut down, they've been still trying to get permission to do it. But look at the rocks. I don't know if you get a grasp of the size of this.
The storehouse that was already here.
And you see the things on the rocks there, those dark patches and those white patches? That's mortar on the north side of it, just like it was mentioned from the Copper Scroll, that it was sealed up of the cave. And Jim's showing you where they did the dig years ago.
He said, Jim, this is mine.
And for time's sake, I can upload this video because he's speaking.
Is there anyone else?
He's telling them about this location. And you'll see in the back, there's the shelf.
If you do decide to come up here, especially going down, be incredibly careful.
Right there it is.
Because you tend to roll those
you can go ahead and stop it. We'll go to the next slide.
So, I was just...
That was a little lengthy. You see the man right there with the black and the kippa? He's from France, and he was involved with a dig in Qumran in the 90s, part of an archaeological dig. He was part of the people that was there to see Jim's research, because this man's research pertained down in Qumran for a different reason. His project got put on hold in the 90s, and he didn't know about Jim's research until afterwards, and he was like, all right, Jim, I need to finish my archaeological dig that we started in the 90s. If we can pull this off for both of us, you do what you do and I can do what I do. Let's get together with the Israeli Antiquities and get this thing going. I'll mention the rest later, but he was cautious, but after seeing the research, he was like, wow, there's no way. So there's Justin and I standing by that entrance. It's plaster, it's mortar. We're in the desert. We're next to this big rock mound. And here on the north side, you come across, that's where they dug down to and they hit plaster and things got paused. And there it is, right there, that whole area. Go ahead, go to the next slide. You can see photos of it. That way you can see it's not just rock. Next. Close up. You see all the little pebbles in the mortar? I mean, you can't make this up. Written in these documents, it explains this, and you go to the place, and there it is. We're talking about many different documents written from Maccabees to Emech Melech, and then we walk to it, and we go up to it, and there it is. Sitting and waiting. More mortar on the rocks. So you can see some of it had been chipped off. But you see that little clumps? I mean, the whole area was just plastered. Next. There's a little opening, like a little shelf. And then go to the next one. Let's see if we can get it. Yeah, that's a video. Go ahead and play that. The audio with this.
There's no question this is mortar.
I got a full battery here
that is here. You can see where it's been formed. This whole area right here. Look at it, it's all mortar. And it fills this whole thing. You're looking at gallons and gallons of mortar piled in here.
I have little baggies. You guys want some of that dirt there?
Wow.
Amazing, isn't it? Next. I believe, yeah, that's a video. Go ahead and play that.
All right, go. You can hear the hollow sound underneath. Look at that. That's like, you could tell they did it quickly, this mortar.
We don't know what that ash stuff is in the back.
That's all mortar. And
no idea what that
what's
is.
interesting is you look around
But
the
did you hear
sides,
it
it's
hollow?
just kind of, you see it on the edge where they plastered it. But right here, everything's all concentrated like in a pocket right here.
We'll go ahead and go next. I just want you to hear
This
that
is like the
sound.
bulk of
Stomping
this
on it, you can
whole
hear underground. Something's under there. Boom, boom. That's the area where Jim had scanned around that and pulled up scans of gold. Large amounts. Fascinating, isn't it?
Do they think that maybe there's a cave system?
There's a cave underneath that. Absolutely.
Is there a system where you can go into the cave and put the items?
They don't know how deep it is or how big it is, but from what Jim's scanning that edge part, it's a massive mound of gold. And that was just the edge. That's the place where it's mentioned that Moses' tabernacle is buried, articles of the temple, things reserved for the future when Israel comes back. We're close. Things that have been sealed up and concealed since the days of Jeremiah, now we know where they're at. Amazing, isn't it? The first one, and here's this one, that's the double entry mikvah pool. We were allowed to go in there. Next slide, that's me taking a photo of myself in there because I was getting measurements for Jim, mapping things out. We're trying to do the best we can to document things, photos, whatever he needed, whatever, anything to help with the project. All right, my son has a question. What is your question? No, in the cave contains things from Solomon's temple and things from Moses, his tabernacle, the altar of incense, Aaron's garments, and different things. And in fact, there is, anyways. All right, I need to wrap up. That's some of the measurements I did. On my phone, you can actually measure things out. So I was getting measurements of places to help out because, markings, so many cubits here. I was just doing whatever I could, learning as I go. And that's just showing some of it. Next. All right. This is the graves. Guess where the graves are located in this Qumran area? If Qumran, which it is, it's laid out, it is a miniature model of Jerusalem in Jeremiah's day. That's what that complex is laid out, just like where the high priest would be, where the temple would be, the water and the baptismals. Everything was a miniature model of Jerusalem in the wilderness. What is east of the temple in Israel? What's there? The Mount of Olives, right? So east of Jerusalem, the temple, is the Mount of Olives. What is on the Mount of Olives? The world's largest cemetery, right? Qumran being laid out just like Jerusalem, and they intentionally buried everyone east of Qumran, just like their little miniature Mount of Olives. Wow. And so when I was there, and we're standing there, and that Jewish man from, he was actually doing the digs around there. And Jim's saying, hey, Qumran's a little miniature Jerusalem. And I was like, well, you know it is, because they even put the graves east of it just like Jerusalem. And the Jewish man looked over, and he's like, oh my goodness, that confirms it. It is. I mean, even the graves are east of the complex. Yes?
Explain to them why they're burying their people on the east side of Jerusalem.
That's a good one. Why are the people, well, the world's largest cemetery, the most expensive real estate on the face of the earth is the Mount of Olives, and it's a massive amount of tombs on the Mount of Olives. The reason why they have buried, even the prophets are buried there, is because they know when the Lord comes, he will land on the Mount of Olives, and they shall be the first of the resurrected. Because it says he stands on the Mount of Olives. I mentioned that earlier. Thank you. So Qumran is laid out exactly the same way. Because the Lord's coming from the east, and they put even the graveyard on the east. Every little detail is, you can't make this stuff up. You cannot. 8:34. I did have another thing. I don't know if I should have time. All right, go to the next slide, just for time's sake. Talents, conversions of talents into modern day currency. One talent is anywhere from 50 to 75 pounds, more than likely 75 pounds would be a talent, but for me to be conservative and not try to bloat or inflate it, one talent on this, conservatively, really 75, but 60 pounds average would be a talent. So 1 pound equals 14.58 troy ounces, US dollar per troy ounce as of November 12, 2022. Silver would be 21.71 per troy ounce. Gold would be $1,770.70 per troy ounce. Example, column 1, line 1, that I had read in the Valley of the Core, yada, 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 lies 17 talents of silver. So if we take that 17 talents of silver, convert it to our modern value today, it comes out to be $322,936.25. Just that one location. And there's like 57, 60 locations in total. One place has 900 talents of gold. So let's just look at 17 talents of gold. That comes out to, 17 talents of gold comes out to be $26,339,162. So what has been reserved by Jeremiah? And 50 cents. What has been stored up, because Jeremiah had been warned of the Lord to go and hide these things and bury them for the last days. The entire financial system to help them or preserve it only for the house of God has been set there. This is not to be used for anything but for the Lord. And it is, remember the scripture says, a wise man leaves an inheritance? God left an inheritance for a reason. Next slide, we'll go through this. Mark 5, 1 through 20, I have it pulled up, and I shall go quickly on this because I want you to see it. I was like, where are we going? Mark 5, 1 through 20, I will read some of it so you have a context of what it is. Then they came to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, to a country where the Gadarenes, and when he had Jesus come out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs, right? So Jesus comes out, lands on the shore, in a particular part of the Galilee, and this is where Jesus casts out the legions of demons out of the man, right? Immediately there met him out of the tombs a man. So there's tombs that this man was residing on that was next to the Sea of Galilee, okay? A man with unclean spirits who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no one could bind him, not even with chains. But he had been often bound with shackles and chains, and the chains, he'd pulled them apart, he'd break them, yada, 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 as we go on. And day and night he'd cut himself and crying. That was verse 5. Verse 6, Jesus saw him from afar When he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and worshipped him, and with a loud voice, and we know he cast them out, right? He's full of demons, verse 9. And he said, what is your name? And he's saying, my name is Legion, for we are many. Verse 10, and he begged him earnestly that he would not send them, the demons said, do not send us out of the country. Now a large herd of swine was feeding near the mountains. So all the demons begged him, saying, send us to the swine that we may enter them. And at once Jesus gave them permission. And basically, the demons go in the pigs run over and drowned, right? We all have heard this story. I went to that place. So, all right, let's do the slides and we'll wrap it up. When we were going up the hill, you can see that area. Angie just had her mouse up on that mountain. See all that? There's no vegetation there, yet you can see the other parts. There's all this vegetation. I thought they got a really, really bad mold problem because the ground's just all tore up all through there. It just looked like someone plowed it or something. It was tombs. That whole hillside was full of tombs. This is where that man resided, in those tombs, right there. We drove right by it. And I was like, whoa, look at it. It was so obvious. It was just the whole hillside was tombs. This is where this man was, in these tombs, as we read in the scriptures. Next. I'll go back to the video. Let's play that video. It's really short. That way you can just see. In the background is the Sea of Galilee. You see that in between? You see that high part on the right-hand side? That was a city, a town. And I'll explain what was going on. But there's a Sea of Galilee back there. This is where Jesus would come over on the boat, and he got out, and this man came down to meet him. He cast out these demons, and they go into pigs, right? All right, next slide. So we walk up. This is the view at top of that hill. That was a town. Right next to those tombs, this is where the people resided. That's just a whole overview. I tried to get a big view. You can see it online. Next. These are we're walking up this mountain. It's a high place. Guess what this high place was? Where they sacrificed pigs to Zeus. So, meaning all those pigs that got filled with demons, they lost their entire herd to sacrifice to Zeus. Gone in minutes. No more Zeus sacrifice. They lost their sacrifices. So, gone. That's why the people were upset. Totally destroyed their worship to Zeus. Earthquake had hit the place. Destroyed the place. Go next. Israel has so many ruins. It's like, what do they do with it? How do they secure it? It's just everywhere. History, thousands of years old, just laying there. Next. Carvings of columns. Their skill. I'm just impressed that stonework was unprecedented. Next. Was that it? Oh, right there. Mosaic. Almost intact. I go over there and look, and I'm brushing off all this dirt. There's a beautiful mosaic, and it's probably as wide, maybe wider than the stage. And it's just out there on the ground. I don't know exactly where they sacrificed it, but this place was very rich, very elaborate. And when Jesus destroyed their God worship like that, wow. Cool stuff. All right. Anyways, I am finished. Go on Facebook. I'm trying to put stuff on YouTube. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, not just me, but the prayers. In closing, the day before we go to Qumran, because we're praying, one of the men had a dream that there was a woman came up and started fighting him. And so he's wrestling with this woman, and she turns into a demon, like a blue smoke demon. And he's wrestling this demon and realizes it's not the woman, it was the demon behind it. So he's fighting and wrestling it and trying to shove her back, and he wakes up from his dream, and we're sitting there before we head out to go to Qumran. He's telling our group, man, I had this weird dream. And he said, God told me, and Scott was the minister there, and he said, Scott, God told me you need to handle this. Because I don't know what that means, but you need to handle it. So he told Scott. We go to Qumran, Jim shows all these people the places, and at the end he says, let's close in prayer. During this time of showing certain people his research, some lady out of nowhere shows up and is in the group. And remember I told you we had a Native American there that played the wood flute? She just happened to show up with a Native American wood flute too, in Qumran the same day. And so when we're ending in prayer to the Lord, Qumran was a place of the prophets. It's a holy place. And once they dig this stuff out, it will be known as the second holiest site in the land of Israel. And so here's this lady there, and we get down and pray, and she says, I would like to pray too. And she said, I pray to the goddess. And Scott, before she could get the words out, Scott said, silence. God just hit him and shut it down. He goes, you shall not pray to any other God at this place. This is holy ground, and yada, yada. It went on, and it shut it down, and she just walked off, and she sat on the edge of a cliff, playing her flute. And everything that Chris had dreamed prior to just happened right before our very eyes. So there's more to the story on that, but I'll let you know that what has been revealed and what I'm showing you, demonic forces they're quite aware of what's there. And many people had come under attacks before and after the trip. So thank you for the prayers, because that was number one. Pray for this whole thing because it's about the Lord. So thank you. Let me close in prayer. Father God, I thank you for the opportunity for all of us. If I go as an ambassador to believers that are waiting for the coming of the Lord. And that's what we're there. We're there to do anything we can to help prepare the way. And Father God, we thank you for having this opportunity to share, to be involved in what's history. Thank you for your word. Thank you for preserving things to validate your own word. Jerusalem, shake off the dust, and is revealing things that had been hidden to prove that you are the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You are the Lord, the creator of all things. And Father God, we know the day is coming where Jesus is returning, and we are excited and we are ready for this time, for we are in the last days and the last generation. Father God, I pray for everyone that's here. Let them rejoice, and knowing the things of the end days have been revealed ahead of time to them, so we can watch and pray as you unfold these things to us. For God does not let anything happen unless he reveals them to his prophets first. And here we are, sons and joint heirs of the Most High, and we are knowing things before they come. Thank you, Father God, what you've done, and we do everything and pray everything in Yeshua HaMashiach's name, Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God. Amen.